Actually, in those days, we were so inefficient at everything that we did, and so incapable of knowing the significance of what initiation meant. And I remember that, of course, at our fire yagya for the marriage, we we didn't have enough money to buy butter, so we used margarine. And when Srila Prabhupada tried to start the fire, he picked up a piece of wood and he dipped it in. Beautiful. Prabhupada's hands were magnificent, long fingers like this. He picked it up and held it over the flame, and it went. He did it again. Over the fire, no action. So he looked up very grave and said, "Oh, this marriage will have a very slow start." I was mortified at that. I thought, uh-oh, what have I gotten into now? But yeah, very significant. I suppose at initiation, I do remember very clearly that Srila Prabhupada first gave me the name Kalindi, which is another name of Jamuna. And very quickly, within 10-12 seconds, he said, "No, it is Jamuna Devi." And I said, "What does that mean, Swamiji?" And he said, "The river that Krishna sports in Vrindavan is Jamuna." On that day I made very Bengali food and served it in a Bengali fashion, arranged on the thali in a Bengali order. And Srila Prabhupada's sleeping room is where he respected. And so he sat behind his desk, and Pishima, we gave a small chunky. She sat just directly opposite Srila Prabhupada on the floor. So as soon as I brought the thalis in and sat them down, Srila Prabhupada started making these little comical remarks about his sister. And he said, "You know, she says it is water, I say it is fat." And I thought, my goodness, he's talking about her weight. You know, what's going on? And as soon as Prabhupada started kind of being light in his voice, Pishima kind of started chuckling. You know, she started kind of laughing on the side. And he said, "All this." And he went like this. He was flapping his arm back. He said, "This is fat," he said. "But she calls it water. It's not so." And then he started teasing her. He started telling her about, oh goodness, the days when in their childhood they used to fly kites. And he said, "I always used to beat her at kites," he said. And back and forth, he was speaking very brother-sisterly about his little sister. So she was laughing, not understanding a word of all this. And in the course of all this kind of jesting, I was bringing the chapatis in, relays of chapatis. And when Srila Prabhupada finished his meal, I noticed that every katori, the little round bowls that all of the moist preparations that are in and serving a thali, they were now piled one on top of the other, from the largest to the smallest, nearly 12 inches high, on top of his chunky. And when I walked in the room, he took his finger like this and he knocked down the whole stack. And he said, "Yamuna Mai ki jai." And I said, "Srila Prabhupada ki jai." And Pishima said, "Gauranitai ki jai." And I said, "Oh, Srila Prabhupada, you ate everything." He said, now this was a speech that the two of us had with each other. Srila Prabhupada and I had signals for what the quality of the prasad was. Already now things had evolved much from the very early days. And if he patted his stomach, that meant it was third class. If he went like this, second class. If he went like this, first class. This meant excellent. So he said like that, excellent. And in this way, I remember very light, sweet, jovial, humorous first meeting with Pishi Ma, where she didn't understand a word of what was going on, but she truly loved it. She was very, very fond of Srila Prabhupada, and from that day that I met her until very last, that she was with Srila Prabhupada in 1976, I was also present in Vrindavan. She worshipped him. She just worshipped her brother, and he obviously was very, very fond of her. Generally, Prabhupada would reveal what he thought we needed to know. Some people, their nature is to ask endless questions, but I always felt like a fool asking more than what Srila Prabhupada revealed. Now, if we didn't hear properly, then Srila Prabhupada would have to ask questions, and he would have to repeat. But I found very often the same things that he taught in 1967, say even in regards to cooking, he was revealing that night that same subject matter in 1976, so many years later. Prabhupada kept Krishna consciousness very simple, and for those of us who engaged in his service, at least my relationship was simply to hear and to follow those instructions personally. When we arrived in London in 1968, our small party decided that the best way to become known, Prabhupada wanted us to make a splash. So the best way to become known would be reach the Beatles, because they were luminaries of the time. So we agreed that we would make prasadam dishes, apple dishes, to bring to Apple Records every day, and see if we could catch someone's attention. So we did that, and the prasad went from the lower floors to the upper floors, so that ultimately everyone tasted some of that prasad, and they became a little addicted to that. So finally, when we stopped sending prasad, we were notified, where is this Apple Hare Krishna group? So we came to meet them, and ultimately I think met George that day. And the first person to strike off a serious friendship with George was Shamsunder. He and George Harrison just clicked. They were like brothers. Shamsunder used to rock back and forth. He was a tall, thin man. He used to rock back and forth. And I remember when he met George, he was rocking back and forth. And George Harrison started rocking back and forth like this. And practically their whole relationship was, I remember, like this, back and forth. Very close friends they became. But ultimately through that, George became aware of our chanting. Now Mukunda Maharaj, now then Mukunda Das, he was a musical genius, an arranger and a composer, and he was the leader of our group. We all played instruments, and he composed the melody for Govindam, and we used to go about London and do Sankirtan at various places, the Arts Lab and a macrobiotic restaurant. So we were pretty tight musically. And when George heard that we were into transcendental chanting and chanting Hare Krishna, he really wanted to hear us. And almost right away we started having really good kirtans with him at his house, and he said, I want to record this. And so the first thing we did was the Hare Krishna mantra on a 45, and I believe it was Sri Krishna on the backside. That became number 1 in Czechoslovakia, was top 10, topped the pops in England. And then that led to the larger album, the Govindam album, which the lead cut was the Rama Samhita, the Govindam prayers. So Srila Prabhupada was, of course, very happy with the involvement that we were having with the Beatles. We ultimately lived at John Lennon's Tittenhurst estate for much of the fall of '69. And when Srila Prabhupada finally did arrive, he was so very pleased of this connection. I believe he called that Govindam cut a Krishna conscious symphony. This is a Krishna conscious symphony. Very transcendental. You like that? And in the course of moving the deities, I believe each man two per deity I was following, one of them knocked. The curtains were closed. We were behind adjusting the deities. And one of the persons, somehow or another, inadvertently knocked one of these columns with their elbow. And in as fast as an accident happens in an automobile going 70 miles an hour, everything slowed down into slow motion. And I remember watching this column go out with the speed of lightning. Srila Prabhupada moved all of the paraphernalia with his right hand off the bottom granite step, stepped up with his right foot on the first step, his left foot on the second step, grabbed one column, this huge column, the column was at least 6 to 8 inches in diameter, with his right hand, and Radharani's hand with his left hand. And I saw on his brow little beads of perspiration, the first time I had ever seen him perspire. And this was such a chivalrous thing that Srila Prabhupada did that I understood what the rasa of chivalry was. And he had that in protecting Radharani. That's one example of Srila Prabhupada exhibiting a very personal rasa with Krishna, actually saving Radharani from disaster and exhibiting superhuman strength and the alacrity of the movement of the mind. It couldn't have been faster. Je anilo premadana koruna prachu je anilo